What's up, bookworms? Welcome to episode 94 of the Cantina Book Club podcast, where readers can find interviews with authors of all genres. I'm Megan, self proclaimed content queen, here to bring you insights from the authors themselves. Each week features a Cantina conversation with an author. Sometimes they're returning guests, sometimes it's someone new. So please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on an episode. And feel free to browse through existing episodes so that you can watch a previous interview about a book that you've just finished. Just a heads up that I often use adult language to express my feelings towards these authors and their work, whether the characters need to get their shit together or I'm encouraging the badass FMC to just fuck it all and burn the world to the ground. Just please be mindful around listening ears. Books coming out this week, July 8th, The AI Incident by J.E. Thomas. If you didn't catch the interview from last week, I talked with her about her book and we caught up because she was a returning guest and it is a middle grade book. So I do encourage listeners with kids ages 10 to 14 to check that book out, as well as her previous book, Control Freaks. Today's episode features a chat with Susan Wiggs. We're talking about her book, Wayward Girls. That book is available on July 15th. This was such a fun conversation with Susan. I loved chatting with her and really just learning about how her fascinating research led her down to find out disturbing facts and events that inspired this story. There's so many crazy things to learn, and I really did enjoy this book. It tugs at the heartstrings. It's heartbreaking and inspirational, and you'll hear all about it. Without further ado, here is Susan Wiggs. So today we've got Susan Wiggs. We're talking about Wayward Girls. That book is available on July 15th. Susan, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I finished this book a couple days ago. It's fresh in my brain, and you hit the emotions. You tugged at the heartstrings. It was just inspirational and heartbreaking and like girl power, all that good stuff. I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper today.
Oh, thank you for having me and for saying that. Oh my God, this is the moment. This is like my favorite time in the life cycle of a book. And it's when it leaves my hands, it's released into the wild. I have nothing more to do with it. It's all up to the readers and the reviewers and the librarians, and they make of it what they will. And I love it, good or bad. And so thank you so much for reading Wayward Girls. Cheers to you. My drink today is
Yes,
called the Clover.
I got my yeah.
This one is called the Clover Club, and it's very delicious.
Oh, nice. Is that Wayward Girls inspired,
It
or should I say
is.
60s or 70s
Yeah,
inspired?
I try to do retro things because the book takes place, it starts in 1968. And so I did a little bit of research of pop culture and bar culture at the time. And this one kind of seemed a bit old fashioned. It's got, let's see, gin, raspberry syrup, lemon, foam. It could be egg white or it could be the foam the vegan foam. And
It's like
yeah,
aquafaba
yeah.
or something like that.
And they also have it in a little bottle now. It's called Fee Foam, and it works just great.
Okay.
So anyway, cheers to all of you. And if any of your listeners follow my Instagram feed, there's often a cocktail recipe there, so they can check in there.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Perfect. Yeah, I like always try to look for a bookish themed cocktail. Like I'll try to like just search for stuff to share. And I had looked up the recipe for a Vesper because the book I was reading, that was like the recommended. It was like the characters recommended that. It was also a historical fiction. The
It's a
character
James Bond
recommended that
recipe,
to
right?
another character.
Yeah.
Yes. And what I had never heard of it before. So when I like looked it up and made the drink, I was like, "Oh my God, that is so clear." It's so
Yeah, it
basically,
has the best
yeah.
name. Vesper. Come on. Vesper used to be like this part of the daily mass, but now it's part of the daily cocktail, right?
I know, right? It was just 'cause my best friend, she loves gin, and so I don't know how I feel about it, but after like if you mix it in the right cocktail, I could totally see like how the drink that you're drinking sounds really tasty. I'm a sucker for raspberry though.
Yes.
And it's like you can put raspberry in, I like it. Okay, so to get started, can you share a summary of the book so that listeners, people can follow along with the conversation?
Yeah, it's always a challenge for the author who wrote a 130,000 word book to give it a little succinct summary.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is it's a novel based on a true story. It begins in 1968 during Vietnam War era Buffalo, New York, and it follows 6 teenage girls who are confined at a place called the Good Shepherd. It's this very dark and secretive Catholic reform institution run by the Sisters of Charity nuns. And these girls are locked away for merely being pregnant, indigent, simply unruly, gay, misunderstood, and they're condemned to forced labor in a laundry. And the novel explores the brutal treatment that these girls endured. They were subjected to physical punishment, emotional trauma, exploitation of their free labor, and the facility was really not concerned about being a school or educating their young minds, but using them for labor, for free labor. And so they're in the course of the book, there are multiple daring escapes, and the story is told through dual timelines showing their harrowing experiences at this reform school and their later lives as adults dealing with the lasting psychological effects. But that's just the bare bones of the plot. The real story, I think, I hope, is a celebration of the power of female friendship, sisterhood formed under extreme circumstances. But as weird as this sounds, it's actually a story of triumph and joy, because I think it focuses on survival and resilience and redemption, and the girls form lifelong friendships that help them endure their experiences later and seek justice. So decades later, the survivors finally speak out, and the story takes a turn there. And it also features the perspective of some of the nuns who feel conflicted or not about the participating in the abuse. And I conducted extensive research, and I spoke with survivors of similar institutions. And I hope that it's a powerful story of a dark chapter in American history that most of us didn't really know about. And it's a Catholic reform school, but it's patterned after, maybe some listeners would be more familiar with, the Magdalen laundries in Ireland.
Yeah, like in a nutshell, there's just so much to unpack there. There's so many like layers and just the storytelling of it. It's like you take us down that spiral with them and then you take us to climb back up too. And it's just you caught me. I wanted to know what happened next. I wanted to know how things would turn out. I even like I loved all the characters, like even the troublesome characters. Like I love the messiness and like the drama that they bring. Like it's just in particular just some of the horrible slimy characters and just blind faith and things like that and like the choices they make, but it's just all it just adds so much complexity to the story. And we'll get into it because I think there's just your research for one. I definitely want to tackle that because you've got a bunch of books under your belt. You tend to lean towards historical fiction but also like contemporary, right? Kind of like women's fiction in general. So did you approach like how do you approach your research and in specifically for Wayward Girls? Because I imagine I'm not familiar with your previous works. I was doing my research on you and I saw these titles. I was like, oh shit. It's very accomplished, very,
MNT.
yes. So I want to explore like how, how many rabbit holes did you find yourself down? How did you take care of yourself while you were like navigating these crazy and horrible like stories and all that?
So many rabbit hole, and actually the book is the result of a rabbit hole. I'll tell you very briefly how it even came about, because like most people, I was not aware that we had these Magdalen laundries. For sometimes they're called mother and baby homes, sometimes they're called reform schools, but they really are these horrible workhouses for our cast off girls. And I grew up in a town near Buffalo in Western New York until I was 10 years old. And my brother was a couple years older. We moved overseas when I was a child, and we never went back until John, my brother, and we went back in 2021, and we did this nostalgia journey to visit our childhood home. And you know how things look so different if you go back to where you lived at 10 years old. It's so different. The lens that you see it through is very different. And we happened to go to the church of our youth. It was a big Catholic church. And I suddenly was like assailed with these vivid memories of my brother as an altar boy. And I remembered the time, and I didn't even know that I remembered this until I was standing in front of the church. And I remember the time that his sleeve caught fire when he was an altar
There you go.
boy. Yeah, he was swinging that incense thurible that's got the coals and the incense in it, and a coal got on his sleeve and it caught fire, which kind of, in a way, makes it into the book in kind of a hilarious scene. But that moment sparked a deeper exploration into the impact of the Catholic Church in the 60s and 70s. And that was when I went down the rabbit hole. And somehow, and I can't quite remember how, but it led me to a place called a place on 485 Best Street in Buffalo, New York. It's still there. And that's where I discovered this Magdalene Laundry. It's a place where wayward girls are sent to be reformed by strict nuns. And I was really just vaguely aware of the ones in Ireland, but I was pretty shocked to see that they existed throughout the US as well. And so that was my rabbit hole. And then I started thinking about when I was a little kid. I remember more than one babysitter who went away. And that was the euphemism for the girls who were sent away when they became pregnant. And the more I learned, I just started feeling this helpless pain and rage of these young women. And so my imagination was ignited, and Wayward Girls became this really personal quest for me. And I hope my passion will touch people's heart and open their eyes as well. So that's the background. And so the first thing when you're writing any novel, whether it's contemporary or historical, you've got to bring the story to life with your research, whether it's researching where it takes place or the job that somebody has, the milieu, the culture, anything like that. And I started the way I always start my research, which is with a library. And so, libraries are like my co-writer. And I found a librarian at the Buffalo History Museum. I think we had some Zoom meetings, and she walked me through what Buffalo was like in 1968, because I wouldn't have known. And it was a real eye opener. We talked about maps and things that were going on. I knew where guys had to go when they were conscripted, when they got drafted. And that sort of led me down into the true events. And then the other thing that was a real help in my research was a Facebook group called Buffalo. It's just on Facebook. And I asked one question. I posted a picture of 485 Best Street, which is this very grim looking institution. It's actually, I think it's the top post on my Instagram feed. So if somebody's curious about what it looks like, they can go have a look. It's still there. It's not a Magdalene Laundry now. But anyway, I posted a picture of that and I said, is anybody familiar with 485 Best Street? And in a matter of hours, I got 500 replies. And people were
Oh,
going, my mother used to threaten me with that place. She used to say, I'm going to send you to the nuns. And they said, that's where the bad girls went. People all had these pretty vivid memories. And so that kind of brought it to life too. And so I learned some grim facts, but I also learned things like once a month, the bookmobile would visit this place, and that figures into the story. And so that's the way you put a story together, don't you? I build it around these characters that by this time have become very real to me, and who are they and what's their world like? And yeah, my long-winded answer to your question, but thank you. That was a really cool thing for me to think about, is to think back.
yeah. No, I love just learning because research is half the fun, and I always love to ask authors that question, especially with historical fiction, because I think it's become one of my favorite genres just because I just feel like it's so cool because so much of it is kind of just creative nonfiction almost.
Mhm.
It's like you're taking true events and you're creating something out of it that's not necessarily based on like word for word, event for event, someone's story, but you're taking real people's events and their experiences from these events, like how you did with your characters. It's like how they all ended up there.
Mhm.
And if all these stories are exist and they can be told. And that's why I think I always love asking authors that because then I just want to know like where their research took them. And some of them are like you, where they were doing research for something else and then they found out so much like information and craziness and almost unbelievable like stories that were they couldn't. So where did you guys go overseas then when you left as a
Oh,
child?
yeah. My dad worked for a big multinational company, and they sent us first to Brussels and then to Paris. And
Okay.
all my growing up years were overseas, and so it was it was wonderful, of course. But I missed 10 years of TV and pop culture and cartoons.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
missed the
yeah.
Watergate scandal. I mean, all of that. It was such a different
But
world
not the
back
Beatles,
then.
though. The Beatles were, like, global,
Exactly.
right? Like
Yeah, well, I was very lucky. Like every big group came to Brussels and Paris, and so I saw the Rolling Stones and the Who and Led
Oh my
Zeppelin, and I
gosh.
know it was and
That's
it
amazing.
was very cool because it was a lot wilder back then, and I was a lot younger back then, had a great time.
It was like, "Little baby Susan, okay."
Was. I was, yeah. So that was a lovely way to grow up, but it also bonded me with novels and fiction because you don't watch TV over there. The TV was just dreadful. It was horrible over there. There just wasn't anything to watch. And I was just immersed in the world of books. I used to be fluent in French. I'm not anymore. I speak French, but not fluently. But I always had my nose in a book and I always was like writing. That was my thing. And I went around on my scooter. When you're 14 in Europe, you're allowed to have a scooter. So I went around on my scooter all over the place and just explored the world that way. And I think it fed my imagination and gave me a real affinity for where things come from and the drama behind them. And so I think that's always been an element in anything that I write.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and that's so fascinating because if you think, "Oh, you missed out on a decade or so of, like, American culture," and yeah, look, 'cause there were some big events that happened during that time. Also, you got to experience it's such a unique part of, like, life and that not a lot of people that age get to. So, like, finding the silver lining and but
Yeah.
now you reflect and maybe you know that, but at the time, I totally understand how you were like, "Okay, like, here I am, and I'll just
Yeah.
do my best." Grab a book.
Kids come to it with their own perspective. That was another thing that was fun about writing Wayward Girls is that I got to spend a long time with 15-year-old girls and it got
Yes,
me
yeah.
access 15-year-old me and my daughter when she was 15 and my sister, things like that. And it definitely reminded me that everything is so huge when you're a teenager. Everything is a life or death matter and how hard they feel things and how deeply their bonds are. And it's cool that I'm talking to you today because one of the best friends that I made when I was in middle school was in Waterloo, Belgium, and we were best friends. And of course, lost each other for decades after she moved on and I moved on. And through Facebook, she found me on Facebook and my name wasn't Wiggs and it was my maiden name. And but she I don't know, she saw a picture and it just reminded her of me 40 years later, whatever.
Oh,
And so we got to
yeah,
my friend Kirsten is staying with me now. We see each other all the time. It's really cool. But being
that's
with
so
her,
fun.
yeah, it reminds me of the women in the book because they met as teenagers and then we meet them again much later in life. 50 years later, where have they been? What have they been up to? And so it's cool that I'm with my bestie from junior high this week in particular.
I love that. That is so fun and so what a pleasant surprise to say
Yeah,
the least. Like a little gift,
yeah.
you know? I love that because yeah, I'm fortunate to where my best friend from middle school, I still see her at least 4 or 5 times a year.
And
She's,
I
you
bet
know,
no time has ever passed. When you get together, you just pick up where you left off. It's really
yeah, and, like, we've it's like a 20-year friendship, almo like, 25 going on
Mhm.
25 years, and it's like, we've seen each other at our worst, we've gone points where we've just been at each other's heads, and, like, exactly how you mentioned the teenage years, especially for teenagers in general, but for teenage
Mhm.
girls, it's like, it's just so much because just adding more layers to your story here, it's just because they were held to such a higher standard and, like, the double standard, and even Myron I don't know, is that how you pronounce her name? Myron or M
I say Marin. I
oh,
looked it up because I wanted a name that had some meaning in Ireland, and it's
yeah,
Star of the Sea. And I thought, oh, that's good. That's a really strong name for this gal she's
yes,
surely not perfect, but she didn't deserve to be shut away in this
no.
place. And so she became the ringleader.
And so just seeing how and she, like, when she reflects on so many of what's her situation and what she's doing, it's like she's slowly becoming self-aware because she's like how you said, she doesn't deserve it, but she's, like, even acknowledged, she's like, "Yeah, I question things and I push boundaries, but not, like, troublesome." She's like, "I never thought that." And then, yeah, it's almost like as you get to know, because 'cause I'm gonna ramble on.
Yeah.
So, because when they're like it's almost if they're when they would be in public and they would just be looked at, balked at. Oh, those are the girls from the school, like
The
from
bad girl.
the nun, yeah. Oh, like they're of course, I forget who it was, but it was like I think it was like Denise who said something to them, and it was just like, you're just like you're just messing with them, like you're just making them like more like thinking they're right in their assumptions of you. But that's just a part of it. It's there's so many complications to what those girls went through, especially during their teen years. And not only just the standards, because Myron, she or Marin, I'll just say Marin, or I might, I don't know. If I don't know any, I might switch back and forth. But with when there was a moment in the story where she sees her crush, the person who
Right.
was like added the tally onto her strike, or added the strike
Mhm.
onto her rap sheet or whatever, and he gets to be free. I'm here,
Mhm.
and he gets to be free, even though he was we did the same exact thing together, which was almost
I
nothing,
know, it
which
was
is almost
the
nothing.
horrible crime of going to the movies together. They went to see The Graduate, which came out in
Yes.
1968. I found them doing the research and just loved the soundtrack, Mrs. Robinson, to The Graduate. And so that became the central piece to that scene. But you're right. And it was almost always the girl's fault. What were you wearing? What did you do to tempt this boy? And they never really held the boys to account the way they did the girls. And they also hid behind, oh, this is just for your own protection, your own safety. And one of the first people to read the finished book was Jodi Picoult, the author. And she said,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, she said,
Name drop.
yeah, exactly. Said, this isn't just a moment in time. This is a cautionary tale for right now, how we're
It
treating.
really
Yeah, what are we doing with our young women and our girl, and what messages are we
and
getting?
they're trying to bring those kind of practices and judgments back.
Yeah,
It's
yes,
the worst. Okay, I'm sorry. She was caught kissing a girl, or
yeah,
she was in a horrible situation, like bouncing around foster home, had to defend themselves, or like Marin, where she just, you know, I felt so bad for her mom. I was had a love hate relationship with her mom
I know.
because, but I don't know what it would have been like to live during that time period and in that situation, and she thought, "No, this is the best place for you," because
She could have,
I don't know, it's
yeah,
kinda whatever you endure in there is gonna still be better than what you might endure here,
yeah,
and it's so heartbreaking, and of course, because I like any okay, real quick, you created some swoony men, even though it's not like a romance at all, like Liam and Flynn, and
yeah,
even the background flashbacks with Patrick, the father, I was
yeah,
like, "Oh my god, dreamboat." So but yeah, it was just like the timing was so horrible, and it was so unlucky, and because Liam, he can't stay, and he can't defy orders, he
right.
can't it was just there was this big backdrop of what was occurring in events at the
Mhm,
time and how that affected just like so many things that even on any normal day-to-day basis, like where there's not huge historical like wars and controversial events going on, that would still be terrifying and troublesome and problematic.
mhm,
And yeah, I had a love-hate relationship with her mom because it was
mhm.
just like, what is she gonna it was just an example. Yeah, okay, Marin was stuck there because she had to be away from she wasn't safe in her house.
And I think that one of the things that makes it easier for a novelist writing something that's set back then, they did have fewer choices. This very devout Irish Catholic woman couldn't imagine turning away from her husband, even though she didn't even like him anymore. But she was bound to him and stuck with him. And so she did the thing that she thought would protect her daughter so her motivation was admirable, but the execution maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't imagine what the mom was. And I talk about fictional characters like they're real, but it's like how you make us connect, the readers connect with the
Yeah.
story is because you're trying to I'm sitting here imagining her, the mom, if I was faced with that tough decision of yeah, like just willingly just to hear her fight it every step of the way. That would have broke my heart. That would have broke my heart as a mom because I have 2 little boys. Even then, it's, like, still a challenge. I did want a girl, but I'm boys they say boys are easier, but I'm also no, they're still, like,
They're
they're
all
crazy right
hard.
now. They're
Trust
like
me, they are all hard.
yes, yeah, they're 4 and 7 too, and so they
Aw.
just, like, the Wild West here, but it is I wanna be conscious of, like, how I'm raising 2 white boys and just having them be aware and just being practical and pragmatic about things that they are that is okay for them to understand, or that they, because kids, they notice, they're so observant and they notice a lot, and they're just like they're following the adult's lead.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think, that's like, I'm just paranoid in general, but also self-conscious in general, where I'm like, okay, like I have a responsibility to just raise children that aren't assholes, that aren't racist, that aren't misogynist, that understand and maybe hopefully have an open mind to, yes, this happened in our history. Yes, like it is possible. This is like, you, just because you don't see it now doesn't mean that there wasn't such
Right.
heartbreak for people not like you to get to where things are today. It's just, it was heartbreaking, and it's just, yeah, that female rage was peeking out a little bit after like going through these poor girls' stories, and after reading your notes and stuff like that in the book, where it was like, yeah, like these are based on true events. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Thank you for
that is
being
so
that
messed up.
mom, because I
No,
think
yeah.
if there's anything that I admire so much about my daughter's a young mom too, and my nieces, the one thing that I just so admire now is that they're really hyper aware, much more than I was, and certainly more than my mother was, about being sensitive to that and realizing that our privilege needs to be parked at the door when it comes to dealing with other people. And yeah, thank you for being that mom, because we need
Oh,
more
I'm
of you.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm also like, I'm half Mexican, so I guess I'm fortunate. Like my mom is 100%. Like I've grown up with people of color like in my family, and my dad is Irish. So that's why I was like, also some of those parts, like I got it. Like I get it. I totally understood, and how crazy and devout and how connected like state and church were, and unfortunately still are in some areas. So I understood, but yeah, I think I feel grateful for having just grown up in an environment where those people are like part of my community and part of my circle, my extended circle. I'm fortunate because I'm like, okay, just because this isn't my experience, like I know people like I've witnessed, and I'm also know of other people's experiences, and I'm really sensitive to the privilege, exactly how you said, like the privilege that my skin, my like my maiden name was McCarthy, just very like very white, very, and so it was just gave me like a unique kind of perspective, and I just try to be as open-minded as possible because I know that it's possible. You know what I mean? It's they know, oh, this is, yeah, this absolutely happened, and there's a lot of stuff that weren't taught to us in like in normal school curriculums and stuff like that. So it's just, I that's why I think that's probably where my nerd like in historic my love for historical fiction comes in, because it's just, I like reading books that make me feel like I'm a little bit smarter when I'm finished. So
Mhm.
I'm like, and it's even better when the story is told very well and it really helps you connect to the characters, because I'm like, I really enjoyed every bit of it, but it was also, it could be tough. It could be tough to read at times, because I'm just like, I was rooting for these girls, and I was so glad that you took the story the way you did, because I remember at first, I will try to be a little spoiler free,
Yeah.
but like during the part where it's, oh, they're out, like their story is done, and then I was like, wait, I'm only like 70% done with the book. I'm like reading on my Kindle, and I'm like, wait, where is this story gonna go now?
Right?
And then yeah,
That was,
and then
that
once
was
I
me
got to like
writing
that
it.
last quarter,
That
yeah.
was me writing it.
Yeah, but you figured it out. You did it
Yeah.
well, because it was just like that's where the powerful I loved the story became more entertaining when there was like more safety. It was still entertaining no matter what, but when it was like less bleak
Mhm.
and more like hopeful, and then more like they were taking control
Well,
into
yeah.
they were taking control back.
Yeah. And that was actually one of the things that sustained me through the book, because there's some dark content in that, and there was certainly a lot of darkness in my research, but and some of the things I read were so atrocious that I couldn't include them in the novel. They were too triggering for me writing it, and I knew, and so there are some harsh events that take place, but I think it's really balanced by the indomitable spirit of these girls. You can't keep a feisty teenager down, and so they sustained me through the hard bits, because it really was a challenge to keep the balance and keep the content ultimately hopeful and uplifting. I hope I succeeded, so we'll see.
It was, yeah, because the girls, like, you definitely, as the characters, they are, it's, you can tell, like, they still have that kind of journey to go on. Their journey's not finished. But you could tell not only once they started, like, reconnecting, they were they knew they had already known, like, that they were still traumatized, like PTSD, then they were, like, reluctantly, but acceptingly ready to confront it through the power of each other. And I love that that was one of the running themes was just, like,
Yeah.
the solidarity, the sisterhood, because that really is and it's still, like, even it's parallel to real life. It's we need to stick together because they want like, it's women, it's once they don't what was it? Well, there was a show that I watched. Oh my gosh, I forget what it was. It was, like, on FX. It was just basically a story about oh god, I'm so blanking on Kate Blanchett. I think she starred in it, but so did Elizabeth Banks, but it was, like, a while ago, but it was basically, like, a time period where there it was, like, when Shirley Chisholm first I'm pronouncing that name, but that was that election where she
Oh.
put her name in the ring, and they were following but it was all about women's rights and how, like, women were still subjugating, and there was the 2 sides of the women who were fighting for the right to vote or fighting for equal rights, and then the women who were like, "No, this is our place. This is how things should be," and one woman says, "You can stand on their shoulders, but they're still looking up your skirts," and I was like, "That's, like, kind of what that, like,
That is a great line.
that yes, and then if I'll have to find that show because it was really I feel like it was done well and it was just, like, attractive in that way, but yeah, it was just that's what it reminds me of, like, when I push for, like, the sisterhood. It's men don't it's okay, not all men, but, like, always a man. It was,
Yeah.
like, just whether it's, like, abuse or just derogatory or being condescending or being oppressive, it's women accepting it and wanting the status quo and saying, "No, this is how things should be," versus which is some of the nuns were and just blindly versus women who are like, "No, like, this is messed up, and we don't deserve this, and this is wrong, and you can absolutely go by a case-by-case basis where half the little girls in here
Mhm.
aren't problematic, but you might be making them problematic because of what you're" and there was just so many layers to it because it was like, well, the characters I just love the sisterhood, and I love their self-awareness and how their self-reflection and how they were growing on their journeys and with each other and within themselves, and then also acknowledging that with each other too. It was like, maybe they it toughened us up. Like, maybe we were able to go on and do the things that we were able to do because of our time there. And it was they were the time it was like their time in the facility was like, what, a year and a half, something like
Yeah,
that?
it covered
And
the
yeah.
calendar year, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it was everything when they were in this place that seemed there was no end in sight. And it was everything like I mentioned earlier, when you're a teenager, everything matters to the nth degree. And but on the other hand, I don't want to say that it was a gift to these girls, but I think that it was empowering to these girls to know that they could survive that. And they all end up in different places in life, and some of them better than others. But really, I think that they look back and they think, I survived the worst. I can take on anything that life has to offer. And that's why we have one of them. I loved it when I figured out that one of them could go to West Point, the United States Military Academy, in the first group of graduating girls. I won't say which one.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved that lined up with my timeline in the book and a couple other things like that. So that was a little perk for me to figure out where things fit in my timeline. And that was a lucky.
I love that. Yeah, because it was yeah, it's just okay, like, you guys aren't shit. I dealt with so much worse.
Yeah.
Like, because she talked about what she endured as the first females in that class. And no, it was, but you're so right because it really is. Again, that made me reflect on my own life. I'm lucky enough to never had to have endured some of those things. I'm from a different generation and I'm very fortunate that the way I grew up, my parents were both middle class and they were both working. And it was like, I'm grateful for all that. But yeah, it was just like, it reminded me of hard times that I did go through. And I was just like, I got through it, and so now going forward after that, because like, I was like, back when COVID hit, like, I got laid off, and I was 90 weeks pregnant
Oh my,
with my 2nd child, and I was like and it took trust me, it was I was emotional, I was like, "Oh my god, what am I gonna do?" And it was just like, "Okay, do I find a job right away so that I can have some solid time there before I have to, like, leave for a couple months, or do I, like, just ride out unemployment until I give birth?" And so, these are all things that were going through my head, but I had to remind myself of who I was, and then that pulled me out because I was like, "I'm awesome." I was like, "I'm a bad bitch. I will get through this."
It's a really good,
And that kind
really
of that
growing.
reminded me of with your characters too.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
just like, this sucks, it sucks, but it's gonna be okay. Like, I will figure it out, and I did. It was like 2 weeks later, I found a job, and it was just
yeah.
like, you
That,
know.
that's one of the reasons I also love historical fiction, and I say historical even though it's more like nostalgia fiction because it happened not in the deep bowels of history, but we can relate to it in our current circumstances. And yeah, like you learned, slogging through COVID and unemployment and pregnancy, you had a trifecta of challenges, and the fact that you survived it is going to strengthen you to face whatever is to come. And I hope the girls, my wayward girls in the book, embodied that, found that inner strength, because they sure didn't get a lot
Yeah.
of support back then.
No,
Yeah.
I seriously, it also makes it even more powerful because they had each other, even though, and like they were fighting literally, they were fighting against the system
Mhm.
50 years later. Actually, well, when everything was made legal, not like on in the time that they were there. They were still, but they still like Marin, she like, yeah, how you said she became the ringleader, but she was like, she didn't give up. I was like, I would be such a boring book character because I would have been like, just
Same, same.
after the first, well, after 3 failed attempts, I would, okay.
My characters are always braver than I am, for sure. And yeah, it's fun for a writer to writers are more like Walter Mitty. We're hiding behind our typewriters or our computers or whatever and letting our characters take the gloves off. I think that's empowering to any writer, or and I hope readers when they read Wayward Girls, if they'll reflect like you did, oh, that reminds me of me when I was that age, or who I want to be now, or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's so many, I just feel like it's hard to lump it into a shorter conversation because you could dissect like every little thing that you did with every character, both like main and secondary. Cause like Marin, she was still fortunate. I feel like that she had an older brother who was like in her corner
Mhm.
and taught her how to drive and was willing to teach her self-defense. And then also like just hearing about the backstory, the flashbacks, like her relationship with her father, that was like so heartbreaking. I was like, and then even hearing from Deidre, from ma'am,
Yeah,
mom,
mom.
her point of view, because it just threw me off, and I was like, "Is that like a Buffalo accent, like ma'am, or an Irish/Buffalo
Yes,
accent,
kind of like
mom or
Irish
ma'am?"
buff, and I came across that, and at first I was just gonna switch it to mom, but it's ma'am, but it's not like a hard A or something like that. I was talking to somebody who was from the region. They, "Oh, yeah, the Irish Catholics
Yeah.
say it like this." So I decided.
I was gonna say, I wanna dive into some of your, yeah, Irish inspiration because, yeah, I was like, Irish Catholic is very much a class, in its own. That's what my dad was raised at, and as is my dad, I just always grew up like I was raised to be Roman Catholic, and now I'm like, it's hard to reconcile. Just the older I get and the more the individual that I become, it's hard to reconcile with the Catholic Church for me personally, and like my beliefs or whatever. But my parents, they wanted us to have some faith, which I understand. But my dad, his dad worked at a Catholic school that they attended. So whenever like they got in trouble, he was just like, "Well, just put him where I can see him." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's like terrifying." And then also my dad was like, "I did my time." It was like, so I had a really weird like outlook on religion because it was just like it's something you had to do, not something to connect with. And so yeah, like back to my point, I want to explore that part of like how you researched and like how you made that group, that community, and those beliefs and that culture like so immersed because that was such a driving force, and especially like what was served as an obstacle because the powers that be were very much part of that community.
Yeah, and I was very much like you, where I was immersed in that because I was a kid, and my parents were not overly devout or religious, but it was more like a tradition. Of
Mhm.
course you're going to go to catechism. Of course you're going to go to church. It's just what we do. And there wasn't a lot of reflection on why or philosophizing. And I think that one thing that I was drawn to and I still cherish as memories is the ceremony, the incense and the music and the song and the raiments and things like that. For a kid, there's some sort of comfort in it that it's a tradition. And I guess I'm super lucky that I didn't experience any of the dark side of the church. I didn't have anybody being mean to me or abusing me, neither did my siblings. But I did notice one thing: when my dad was in his 80s, he left the Catholic Church and never looked back. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "I don't like what I'm hearing about the priests." And that's all he said.
Yeah,
You know,
that's all he said, and now, when you heard it back then, you were probably like, "What?" And then now you're like, "Oh."
I yes, yep. And so they've got a lot to answer for. But on the other hand, and I just posted this on my Instagram feed, religion can bring comfort and security to people, but it can also traumatize people. And what's been your experience? And I'm
Yeah,
getting feedback from both sides. And I hope
yeah,
the book opens up a discussion to both sides. Obviously, the girls are not going to be the biggest fans, but it's still out there. And it's still a topic that hopefully we will, I don't think we'll ever resolve it, but it's definitely worth a discussion.
yeah. It's really telling of the churches, the diocese, the response to all this scandal coming out. They're just, "Well, we'll just pay to shut them up." And they keep denying it or turning it around, but they're still funding these settlements because they don't want it to go to
Yeah,
court and they
it's
don't
so
want the
unfortunate.
headlines. And it's, I'm right there with you because I can see it as a very positive thing for people who need it and who need the guidance and who want to believe in a power higher than themselves and have that community, but it's also like the institutionalization of it. I think one of my biggest problems is just like how misogynistic it is. And it's just, oh, the man's job. He has control over the woman and that umbrella or whatever, right? I think I've seen the diagram where it's like Christ, man, woman, and she's just in charge of the kids in the household. And now I'm like,
Excuse me?
yeah, I'm like, if it's taken a lot because like my husband and his family, they grew up like in a one parent, the father working household where the mom stayed at home, and she eventually, as the kids got older, like she also babysat the neighborhood kids, and then she also, as she got older, she was like taking part-time jobs with the school and the church and stuff like that. She was involved, but and my husband and I have a kind of like discussions about it because we're not sure how to like take it going forward with our kids once they're getting older, and it was like I can see now, like, maybe how 'cause it was just we have just such different views. They went to church every Sunday, and like, my husband, they were Cub Scouts, Eagle Scouts, which is very much like religion plays a huge part of that and the whole Boy Scouts of America thing. But yeah, it was just like, it's really hard when I hear, yeah, like, they have a lot of things to answer to, and so many people knew what was going on, but they brush it under the rug, and there were so many. I think I watched a documentary about it was, like, called The Keepers, I think it's on Netflix, and where it was just like, are you familiar with it then? Where it was just like, so it was basically these so many women came forward about it. Was very similar to what your story is about, Wayward Girls is about, and then but there was one nun who tried to she caught on and she was trying to, like, investigate almost a little bit, like, what happened. She was asking questions, and she was, like, trying to look out for the girls, the elementary school girls, and she went missing, or no, her body was found, but
Oh my God.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there was nobody ever that got to the bottom of it because similar circumstances where when they pushed it aside or they hid it, but then it brought up stories of, like, the relocation. Pastors who were being really problematic, they just relocated them. And it's just, like, stuff like that where it's really hard to not keep that in mind when I look at religion. And it's not to say I don't even know a lot about any other global religions either, but I know a lot of it's similar where it's very whatever misogynistic, and I just don't appreciate it. I just
Right.
don't. I'm like, I think it's just that's the one thing that's just black and white for me is like pro-choice. You know what I mean? And then we could go into so many tangents on this, but I think that's like probably the major driving force is just a deal breaker for me. Like as far as voting, I'm not going to say, oh, I don't vote Republican. I'm going to look at their record. I'm going to look at their views and be like, no, I'm sorry. That's just black and white for me. That's a yes. That's a hard line that I cannot look over.
Yeah, one of the things that my publicist sent me, she sent me a document about your podcast, which I love, by the way. I've been listening to it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and
I'm
one of the
gonna have to ask you. I'm gonna ask you what
yeah,
what happened with that because I'm curious as to how like
yeah,
my past was
she likes
presented to
she
people.
loves to prepare us, and one of them was what kind of advice would you give your characters in the book? And I'm thinking I would love to give them the same advice I'd give my teenage daughter, which is hold on to who you are no matter what.
Yeah.
More than you think, and your gut will tell you everything you need to know. So you pay
Hmm.
attention. And I was reading, I had a unique experience with this audiobook. I love audiobooks because I can listen and read a book while I'm doing other things. And so I was really lucky to be able to choose the narrators of Wayward Girls. And it's actually going to
Oh,
be told
perfect.
in two voices because I guess it spans such a long amount of time.
Oh,
And
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And then they asked me, and my editor, they asked me if I would read the author's note and the acknowledgement at the end. And then they also asked if my editor and I would have a discussion because it is a bit of a different book from other books that I published before. My other books were, I hope, substantive and hard hitting, but nothing quite like this. And we got, my editor and I got to talk, we went to a studio and we got to talk about the book. And I read that and I realized as I was reading the author's note, my voice started to shake in a couple of places because I realized I'm pretty emotional about some of this stuff. And it all has to do with protecting women and girls and who they are and giving them agency over themselves and not trying to impose or legislate who they are. And I was surprised. I thought, I've been over this material a million times, and here I am reading it at this high level studio and I'm still getting into it.
It was the environment. You were like, okay, no, I'm speaking to the reader now.
That's right.
Like, I think that's what it was. But how fun and exciting.
It
Is that
was.
the first time you've ever done that?
I never got
Uh,
to do that before and it was awesome. I loved it. But
Published as you are, I'm surprised.
no, I have new respect for narrators of audiobooks because my part of this audiobook was maybe a handful of pages. They've got to read a
Sure.
500-page novel and it can be pretty exhausting. And so hats
Yeah.
off to the narrators who bring these books to life in just such a
I
different
can't.
form.
I know it's not only just like keeping their voice clear and making sure that they're not breathing too hard and making sure their lips aren't smacking like things like that and then they gotta make it engaging for the reader and like the inflections and the pauses and the like you could hear the emotions like what they're going through and because I'm been really big into my audiobooks that I've been listening to for the past 6 months
Mhm.
have been Brandon Sanderson.
Oh, of course.
And yes, I
Yes.
know the Stormlight Archive. I'm finally on book 5, but they use the same narrators for all 5 of them, and it's, like, over 250 hours of audiobook, and, like,
Oh my
across the
God.
5 the shortest book is 42 hours.
Wow.
I was like yeah, and I was like my cousin who recommended it to me, I was like, "If you want me to read this, I need 20 hours from you,
You're
sir."
going to have to drive cross country or something by yourself so you can hear it all.
I know I would look forward to driving or walking or like my workouts where I'm like not reading or I could just play yeah, exactly how you said plug it in. Although it's funny because like I have like my little earbuds and so with my hair, my husband is like trying to communicate with me and he doesn't know I have my hair but my earbuds in. But you're absolutely right with the narrators. It's like it will make or break a story and which such exactly you're right. 400 pages, whatever, like 30 hours so much, and I'm so good that's so exciting for you, that's such a fun thing that you got to experience because then also it gave you a little bit perspective, but
Yeah,
also, like, it helped you to connect to your story in a different way.
it was very cool. And you're very cool to read these books and broadcast for us because I'm deep into my next book. Left my Wayward Girls behind. So thank you for picking up the torch.
Oh, of course, it was something about the blurb, I was like, "Oh, shit." I was like
It is an oh shit book for sure. And I have to say,
it was, at the very least,
yeah,
like
when I describe it to people, they step back and go, really? I better have a look at that. So we'll see. I can't wait for people to bring it into their book collections and see what they think.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I'm right there with you because then I'm going to be like, what are people saying about it? So we tapped on this a little bit. What do you hope readers get out of Wayward Girl?
First of all, the thing that I always want with every book that I write is it was a great read. That's always the goal. I want the reader to feel like she's been somewhere special. She stepped into a special world. You're reading Brandon Sanderson now, the ultimate escape into another world. But with this book in
Yeah.
particular, with Wayward Girls, I would love for readers to be surprised by the things that surprised me and moved by the things that moved me. It would be amazing if I would make them pick up the phone and call an old friend or call their sister. Or I actually talked to somebody who said, yeah, my mother was in a mother and baby home and I found my half sister when we were 60 years old. And
Oh my
so,
God.
yeah, I would love for people to be moved to explore this
Yeah.
deeper.
That's, oh gosh, that's just so much to unpack there too. I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't, I'll cut myself off on that comment. Let's see. And also you touched on this a little bit. What is next for you? What are you working on that you're allowed to talk about?
I think that Wayward Girls is all of a piece. Often I'm inspired to do a spin-off or a sequel, but these girls, I think by the end of the book, we know exactly where they are and where they're going. And I think it's a complete thing. But I do love spin-offs and sequels. And so one thing that I'm doing is I'm working on, I would call it not a sequel, but a companion novel to one of my most beloved series. I wrote a series of historical romances in the 90s and early 2000s called The Calhoun Chronicles. And they're very sexy, really juicy, cool Americana 19th century. And thanks to Bridgerton, the series, they had a resurgence. The publisher repackaged them. They're selling again.
Oh, no.
I'm hearing back from readers. So I wrote a companion novel that's a contemporary one that kind of looks back at the Calhoun Chronicles. So I'm working on that. And I'm also coming up with something I hope is going to be pretty special. It's always really good in my head until I spoil it by writing it. But this one is about siblings. It's a sibling story, and that's all I can say about it because I'm still working out where it happens and things like that. But I I'm super, super close to my sister. She's my best friend. My brother was, sadly, he passed away of pancreatic cancer, and I'm still just haunted by that. And I'm doing a three alone sibling story right now, but it's at the very beginning stages where I haven't quite spoiled it for myself yet. So I'm excited to write that.
That is going to be a powerful and I can imagine really like deep thing for you
It
to
will
get
be.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like you'll come out and feeling just I can imagine there's gonna be so many emotions. I can already sense it.
Yeah.
That you're you probably already know that too. Susan Wiggs, where can we find you online and on social media?
Online, SusanWiggs.com. Very simple. My Instagram is Susan underscore Wiggs underscore. Facebook, Susan Wiggs. Blue Sky, SusanWiggs.com. And I'm on TikTok, and I'm so inexperienced with TikTok that I don't know what it is, but you can search for me on TikTok. And
Yeah.
I'm doing a couple of talking head videos, hopefully not humiliating myself too much.
No, it's okay. I think there's like a level of I think a lot of users, they see the age, and I'm like, not to say the age, but there's a kind of understanding because people in your generation have had to try to keep up. Because
Right.
I'm like, my parents, they're in their late 60s. My mom's like 73. Like, I've helped, she'll stress herself out so much about the printer or something. And then she'll be like, Megan figured it out in a second. And I was
She's
like,
got
it's
brain.
okay. I know, though. No, it's okay. It's okay. I think that it's a little bit wholesome for people in your generation, like my parents' generation, or even this one not older people who are just trying to keep up. It's you. I bet you would get like fans if you just acted like yourself, like
Yeah. So yeah,
hey,
I
you
try.
know,
Yeah. It's quite a distraction. Actually, I'd rather be home reading a book. So that's actually my happy place. And hopefully it's our
yeah.
everybody's happy place ultimately.
I yeah, if I could, I would just it really like my one of my like favorite me time activities is just to go to a bar with my book by myself and just
Oh, I
have a
like how
drink,
you
have
think
some
a bar and a book. A girl, a bar,
yep,
and a book.
there you go. With some munchies, maybe some
Yeah,
snacks. Like
nice.
Exactly. Okay, so Susan Wiggs, Wayward Girls, that comes out on July 15th. Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. I would like I said, I feel like we could talk about go off on tangents and get carried away. And I'm so fortunate that I got to read your story and your work. And if and when you're releasing your next title, feel free to get in contact. I'd love to chat again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. You are terrific and so fun to talk to.
And there you go. That was Susan Wiggs talking about her book, Wayward Girls. That book is available on July 15th. Check out the show notes where you can find links to purchase the book and where to find Susan online and on social media. Please find Cantina Book Club online and on social media while you're at it. And check out cantinabookclub.com if you need book recommendations. I'm always posting book reviews from all sorts of genres on there. And I'd appreciate a follow and a subscribe as well to the YouTube channel where you can find clips and interviews, full interviews with authors. And there's also videos that are segmented by genre and by specific authors. So please go check that out. Hit subscribe so that you guys never miss a beat. If there's one thing that you'd like to do that costs you no money and maybe a little bit of time to help authors out, it's to hop on over to Goodreads and Amazon, give them a rating and review. It really does help them out. And as always, thanks so much for watching and for listening.